What happens if somebody transitions? Like, where do you take that? Like, if they've actually been transitioned, where do you go with that? Where do you think God goes with that?
That's a good question. Was not one that I had in mind. Thank you for. So I have a friend of mine from college that his cousin went that route, and I guess one of the things that I would say is that transgenderism is less clear cut from biblical standpoint. For same-sex attraction, it's, okay, we have 4 verses, 1 from the Old Testament, 3 from the New, that make it very obvious that here's what you can't do if you're same-sex attracted. With transgenderism, that's a lot harder because the Old Testament has a verse about not cross-dressing, but there's nothing in the New Testament about that. I think that the biblical authors in the New Testament would still hold to that ethic. But it's harder to make a biblical case for the sinfulness of that. Where I tend to take it is more of, okay, so imagine you are struggling with a lot of anxiety, a lot of self-consciousness as a girl, as a teenager. I mean, maybe you experienced that, like as a teenage girl. Like, I mean, I think it's, well, okay, teenage girls, since you're here, like, lots of self-consciousness and anxiety. Does that kind of match your experience a little bit? Like, or friends that you know, like, does that match? Okay, so that's a very turbulent time of life. And then you have people on Tumblr who are saying, that, hey, if you're experiencing this, it might be because you're transgender. And they're offering a solution to these problems that they're experiencing with being self-conscious and their anxiety and things like that. And so they take that as a solution and they start moving towards that. Okay, I take that for one, that person is buying into an ideology. I don't think that that's necessarily that they're trying to sin or anything. It's just they're trying to find relief. With that, though, it's like, okay, you have people who are going to that as a solution to their problems without first checking to see what other things might be causing this anxiety, what other things might be causing this self-consciousness. Because then, if you go through with transitioning and having surgical help to transition, well, now you might have the same problem with self-consciousness and anxiety that you had before, but now you took the step. So in my mind, I think it's something that the church should be saying, let's really consider how we can help you in your brokenness, rather than saying, okay, let's just leave transgenderism off the table. You're stressed and you are experiencing a lot of self-consciousness. Let's see how the gospel addresses that with your own health, and then walk you through that journey. I think it's a tragedy that there are so many young women who I think are just more susceptible to this in general, just because psychologically where they tend to line up. I think it's a tragedy that there are so many young girls who will take this step and then regret it later. And I think it's an opportunity. That is also an opportunity for the church to walk through that brokenness. There are people who detransition after their transition, but it's a tough go. And it's like I would so much rather that our teenagers go get help from the church, go get help from therapists who aren't going to just affirm and really take the time to give some tough answers and to teach them how to have bad days, to teach them to take responsibility, to teach them to push through. And it's to me, it's more than anything, transgenderism, There will be a lot of stories of people who regret it. That breaks my heart. There's a lot of people who don't know any other answer. That breaks my heart. There's a lot of people who are going to harm their own bodies, and that breaks my heart. But in my mind, transgenderism is, in my mind, it's way more about brokenness and just a tragic story rather than they've gone off into sin. Now, and part of the issue with that too is that a lot of people who do transition will leave the church because the church is teaching on it. And that's there's two ways that I think it's unfortunate that T is included in LGBT. One is such a different issue because so many now are experiencing rapid onset gender dysphoria, and that's not like a persistent from the time you were a kid. That's different. But then also LGB, like that's pretty clear from the Bible, and then T gets lumped into the same, like, well, then that's sinful too. And it's like, I think it is, yes, it's denying the way that God made you. Yeah, but I think it's way more about they've been deceived and hurt. And I want to step into that place first before I start addressing what sin of their own may have led them there. So does that answer the question? Okay. It's so tough. And it's too, like, it's not like, you know, there's a like straight Bible answer from that, you know, like there's what you do if you're a Jew and what you do if you're a Gentile in the New Testament, but like that, it's like, I don't let's use biblical wisdom, I guess. So yeah, that's a good question.
Is it considered sinful for a girl to like boyish things and a boy to like girlish things?
I don't think so. No, and that goes back to the whole idea of gender stereotypes of like, well, like I said, I like cooking. The Bible never says it's man shall not like cooking, only hunting. Like, it doesn't say that. So I think one of the things that we're not very good at yet as the American church is to, like, if you don't like the DSM, it's probably because they assign mental illness to too much. Well, the church assigns sin to too much. If the DSM is unhelpful and inaccurate because they assign mental illness to too much, then the church can find themselves in the same boat by being inaccurate and unhelpful when they assign sin to too much. Some things are just like, okay, you like trucks, you're a girl. I saw a truck, by the way, just the other day, like huge, like, you know, massive tires. And it was a play off of the Tricks Are for Kids thing. There was a bumper sticker and it said, "Silly boys, trucks are for girls." And it was like, good for you, girl. You know, like, go for it. I don't care. Like, I'm glad that you like that. You know, I mean, horses used to be a guy's thing, you know? Like, back in the Old West, it's like, yeah, I got my Mustang here. You know, they could barely talk. They were from the South, you know? Just like, you know, and now it's like a guy's gonna be like, check out my Mustang, you know, and then girls are like, I've got my Mustang here. It's a gelding. Like, it's so sweet. I've got my brushes and I've got my saddle. It's really cute. Like, how did that happen? You know, like. Part of me wants horses back, but I guess, you know, you guys can keep them because I'm not going to take care of it. You know, I can barely take care of my car, you know, and it doesn't need food. So, yeah, but like that, I think, is an example of like cultural mindsets about certain things change. So, you know, like Abigail, I know you like horses. Like 100 years ago, you would have been like, you know, like kind of a burly woman, you know, in order to like horses. But like, you're extremely girly. So, yeah, I don't think it's sinful to like things that are stereotypically a guy's thing. And if you're a guy, I don't think it's sinful to like a stereotypical girl's thing. Like I said, I like art. Like, I'll go to Minneapolis Institute of Art and be like, that's a cool piece of art. I can't say much more than that, but I'm just like, that's a cool piece of art. So, yeah, well, no, not the walls. It's a wonderful abstract painting.
So what do you think would be the best way to make other peers stop joking around about people who are, I don't remember the word for it, but who aren't LGBTQ and saying that they are?
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. So, yeah. I think I would appeal to love. So to kind of reword the question, just to make sure that I'm answering the right one. When you're with peers and it's, your peers are all heterosexual, cisgender, that whole thing. And then another friend likes to make gay jokes and be like, that's so gay, like you're gay, how to get them to not do that. I think, I would appeal to love and say, okay, I would probably approach that person specifically and kind of do Matthew 18, right? Like, there's no need to say something in front of the whole group if you're hanging out as a group of friends, but to approach that individual and say, hey, so for one, you don't know everybody's story. You don't know what someone might be struggling with. That would be a good place to start. A lot of people haven't come out yet, there might be a friend who actually is, and then it might be the person that they're making fun of. That's not going to be good for them. It might be someone else in the group who isn't being made fun of, but they hear this person making these jokes, then they feel like they can't be themselves. They won't be able to. This is not a safe place for them to share what's going on with them. And I think you want someone to feel safe enough to share what they're struggling with, no matter what, right? Like it could be same-sex attraction, it could be substances, it can be so many different things, right? You want people to be able to feel safe enough to open up and share. And then just like, okay, do you think that that's loving your neighbor by making those jokes? Do you think that that's using your God-given speech in a way that's honoring to people and honoring to God? Like, probably not. Do you think Jesus would say that? I don't think anyone can honestly say that Jesus would have made gay jokes. I don't think that that's anything that anyone would ever be able to comfortably and honestly say. So I would appeal to love of just, you want to love your neighbor well, and if they are LGBTQ+, then you really don't want to make them feel judged and ostracized by your language. So that's what I would do. Does that help? Okay. It's tough because it's interpersonal relationships, and I don't know. I mean, for me, because I was a teenage guy at one point, and this wasn't a huge deal. So I'm sure I said, made gay jokes, and that was wrong for me to do. And I think when I started researching these things and how to actually love these people, I stopped. And then that's helpful too, in my own circles. I think that kind of signaled to other people too that it's like, yeah, that's not okay. Let's not do that. You should honor people no matter who they are. So, any last burning questions? We can talk afterwards too, if you don't want to ask your question in this format. Let me pray, and then we can slowly leave.